Today was my 35th birthday. I woke up with the usual aches and pains from my chronic illness, which I've had since I was a child. As the CEO of a successful tech startup, I usually hide my pain with work and caffeine. But today felt different and heavier. I decided to visit the private clinic, a place I almost considered a second home. I knew most of the staff by name, but Tom, the young nurse, always stood out to me. Tom was charming, with a quick smile that made many patients, including me, blush. He was also persistent. Today, when I walked into the clinic, he was the first to greet me. "Happy birthday, Elena." Looking great as always, he grinned, his eyes lighting up as he came over to me. "You know you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you." I sighed as I settled onto the clinic bed. "I appreciate it, Tom, but you know my situation. It's complicated." As Tom prepared the drip, he didn't miss a beat. "I don't care about your illness, Elena. I like you. Whenever you're ready to talk about us, I'm here." As Tom busied himself with the charts, I tried to focus on the positives. I was successful and independent, but I had to admit, I was lonely too. The day dragged on with the usual rounds of tests and doctor's visits. By late afternoon, I was ready to head back home, but Tom had other ideas. "Hey, birthday girl, you can't just go home and mope. Let's grab dinner, my treat. Let's celebrate you," he insisted. I hesitated. It was tempting to spend more time with him outside the sterile clinic walls. "Okay, but just as friends." "Just as friends," he agreed, but the twinkle in his eyes said more. Dinner with Tom was easy and filled with laughter. He had a way of making me forget about the clinical coldness of my routine. As we talked, it wasn't just about my health or the clinic. It was about movies, travel, and food. It was normal, and for a moment, I let myself enjoy it. "Elena, you're amazing," Tom said as he walked me to my car later. I really meant what I said. "I want to support you however you'll let me." I looked at him under the streetlights. "Tom, it's not easy. My life, my health, it's a lot to deal with." "I'm not just anyone, Elena. I'm asking you to give us a chance," he said confidently. I felt a mix of emotions. This kind man was willing to embrace me with all my challenges. "Let's take things slowly, okay?" Driving home, his words played in my mind. Could I allow myself to be happy with him? Wasn't life too short to be alone? 6 months passed quickly. Tom and I saw each other often, and every moment together eased the pain of my illness. He made everything feel simpler, lighter. But deep down, I worried about our future because of my health. Yet Tom remained steadfast. One cool Saturday evening, with autumn leaves painting the city in shades of orange and red, Tom suggested a stroll through the park after dinner. "Elena, I'm not great at fancy speeches," Tom began, his voice a bit shaky, which was unusual for him. "But I've been thinking a lot about us, about how happy you make me. I want us to be together forever." My heart skipped a beat. "Tom, are you sure? You know my situation. It's not going to get any easier." "Yeah, I know, and I don't mind. I want to be there for everything. The good days, the tough days, everything," he said, pulling out a small box from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a simple yet beautiful ring. "Elena, will you marry me?" His proposal caught me by surprise. I loved him deeply, but the idea of committing to marriage had always seemed daunting because of my health challenges. Seeing his certainty and love for us made my doubts melt away. "Yes, Tom, yes, I'll marry you." We hugged tightly, and in that moment, it felt like it was just us in the world, and it felt perfect. In the following weeks, we were busy planning. We settled on a small wedding, just us and a few close friends, including his sister and her husband. But before that, there were practical matters to address. One evening, I sat down with Tom and brought out the prenuptial agreement. "I need to discuss something practical with you, Tom. It's important for my business and my health," I began. Tom nodded attentively. "Sure, Elena. What is it?" I handed him the papers. "It's a prenup." He took them and glanced over the documents before looking back at me with a reassuring smile. "If this helps you feel secure, I'm completely fine with it. I'm not marrying you for money, Elena. I'm marrying you because I love you." "And you're sure about this? About us?" I asked, needing to hear his reassurance once more. "Absolutely," he replied confidently, signing the document without hesitation. "Now can we get back to planning our small wedding?" "Yeah, let's," I said, feeling a mix of relief and love as we continued with our preparations. After Tom's easy acceptance of the prenup, I felt reassured about his intentions and commitment. Our wedding day was simple and perfect. The city hall ceremony was quick, with only our closest loved ones present. Standing there, exchanging vows with Tom, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe despite everything, life was offering me something beautiful. Initially, life after our quiet wedding was close to perfect. Tom took charge of running the household, which was a pleasant change. I'd return home to delicious smells from the kitchen and find everything spotless. The first few months felt like an extended honeymoon phase. However, around a year later, subtle changes began to surface. Tom seemed a bit distant. His enthusiasm for household tasks diminished, and he became more withdrawn. At first, I attributed it to the adjustment of living together or the end of our honeymoon phase, but the shift was undeniable. One day, I arrived home earlier than expected, eager to surprise Tom with news about a potential new client for my business. As I walked in, I anticipated finding him busy in the kitchen or tending to chores. Instead, the house was unusually quiet. Moving towards the kitchen, I heard a voice. A woman's voice, cheerful and unfamiliar, as if she belonged there. Opening the door, I found a middle-aged woman humming while chopping vegetables. She looked up, surprised. "Oh, you must be Elena. I'm June. Tom didn't mention you'd be home so soon." "June? And who exactly are you?" I managed to keep my voice steady despite the shock. "I'm the housekeeper. Tom hired me about a year ago. I come in a few times a week to clean and cook. It helps out a lot," she explained with a smile, unaware of the bombshell she had just dropped. A housekeeper? For a whole year? And I had no clue. Anger and betrayal surged through me, but I kept my composure. "Right. I see. Thanks, June. Could you give us a moment?" "Of course," June replied, wiping her hands and exiting the room. When Tom returned home, he found me in the living room, still processing everything. His face immediately fell when he saw my expression. "Who's June, Tom?" I asked directly. Tom hesitated, then sighed heavily. "She's the housekeeper. Look, I meant to tell you, but I was afraid you'd be upset that I wasn't handling things around the house myself." "Upset? Tom, I'm upset because you lied, because you felt the need to hide this from me." My voice grew more intense with each word. I know, and I'm sorry. It started small, and then I just didn't know how to bring it up without it becoming a big deal. It seemed easier to keep it quiet," he explained, his remorse evident. "Easier for who, Tom? Because this doesn't feel easy for me," I shot back. That night, we talked it out. Tom apologized, and I attempted to grasp his perspective, but a rift had formed between us, a small crack that left me questioning what else he might be hiding. Things smoothed over somewhat, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Tom continued to excel at cooking and managing the house, but now I knew he wasn't actually doing all the work himself. It seemed clear. I worked, and he oversaw the home, though it was outsourced. Yet Tom's behavior remained unsettling, beyond just the concealed housekeeper. Late-night phone calls in hushed tones, sudden demands for privacy, and constant excuses for needing more money, all pointed to something amiss. So, I took action. I hired a private detective, using my resources. It didn't take long for the detective to uncover the truth, and it wasn't what I wanted to hear. Tom was spending most of his days at a casino, losing staggering amounts of money. Relief washed over me that there wasn't another woman, but despair settled in at the depth of his deceit. That evening, as Tom returned home, I awaited him in the living room, the detective's report in hand. He tried to greet me with a kiss, but I stepped back, holding up the papers. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice icy and more composed than I felt inside. Tom sank down onto the sofa, his face buried in his hands. "I never meant for it to spiral like this. It started small, just a way to relieve stress, but it grew, and I didn't know how to stop." "And you thought lying to me and stealing from me was the answer?" My voice rose, frustration boiling over. "I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry. I need help. I want to quit, I swear. Please help me get out of this mess," Tom pleaded desperately. Taking a deep breath, I tried to steady myself. "I'll help you, Tom, but this is the last chance. You need professional help for your addiction, and you're going to sign an agreement acknowledging the $50,000 debt I'm covering." Tom nodded solemnly. "Yes, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll get help." We arranged for him to start treatment the next week. Just when I dared to hope for a return to normalcy, Tom dropped another bombshell. Tom's sudden suggestion caught me off guard. "Elena, I've been thinking. Maybe we should have a baby. It might bring us closer," he said out of nowhere. I stared at him in disbelief. "A baby, Tom? You know that's not possible for me. It's not just risky, it could be life-threatening." He immediately tried to backtrack. I know. I didn't mean. Forget I said anything." But the idea didn't stop there. It kept resurfacing, and even his sister, who was an obstetrician, called me about it. "You should really think about it, Elena. Having a baby is natural. Don't be selfish," she said. "Selfish? You're a doctor. You know my health condition. How can you even suggest this?" I was furious. She scoffed and hung up. The conversation left me shaken. How could they be so heartless and insensitive? Months of building tension and unresolved arguments had left my nerves frayed, but nothing could prepare me for the shocking scene that greeted me that fateful day. I arrived home earlier than usual, expecting a quiet evening, only to open the door to chaos, boxes everywhere, and Tom's sister Lisa and her husband, Mark, rearranging furniture in my living room. "What in the world is going on here?" I demanded, my voice sharp above the commotion. Lisa turned calmly to face me. "Oh, we're moving in, Elena. This is Tom's place, and it's time for you to pack up your things." I glanced at Tom, hoping for confusion or disagreement, but his expression was cold and resolute. "Elena, I can't do this anymore. You've been manipulating and controlling me for years." "It's over," Tom declared, his tone distant and final. I stood there, stunned. "Manipulating me? Tom, what are you talking about?" "You heard him," Mark added harshly. "He's had enough of being your slave." Tom stepped forward, handing me a stack of papers. "Here are the divorce papers. I'm also filing for compensation for years of emotional abuse and alimony. I need to prioritize my well-being now." As I took the papers, the room seemed to spin around me. It felt like a nightmare unfolding before my eyes. I flipped through the documents, each word feeling like a betrayal, but amidst the rising panic, a calm determination settled over me. I couldn't help but let out a short, humorless laugh. "Well, you're in for a surprise. Think what you want. My lawyer will be in touch," I said firmly, without another word. I went to our bedroom, packed a suitcase with essentials, and prepared to leave. There was no point in arguing. The man I had married, the man I thought I knew, was gone. Driving away from the apartment, I headed towards the elite cottage village where my house awaited. A home that had been mine long before Tom came into my life. As I passed through the familiar gates and greeted the guards, a sense of relief washed over me. The house stood exactly as I had left it, spacious, serene, and perfectly suited to my needs. It had always been my sanctuary, a place I had prepared for my future, knowing my health might present challenges. As night settled, I made a few phone calls to my closest friends, letting them know about the situation and assuring them I was all right. Next, I called my lawyer to discuss our strategy. Tom's claims and demands wouldn't go unchallenged. A few days later, settled into the peace of my sanctuary, I was surprised by an urgent call from Tom. His voice was filled with panic and anger. "Elena, you've set me up. This is some sick game to you, isn't it?" I responded calmly, a small smile on my face. "Tom, if there's been a misunderstanding, why don't you come over and we can talk about it? I'll send you the address." Not long after, I watched from my window as the village gate opened and Tom, along with Lisa and Mark, drove in. They pulled up to my front door, their faces pressed against the car windows, clearly impressed by the sight of my expansive home. As they approached, their earlier confidence seemed to falter a bit as I greeted them at the door. Clearing the silence with a small cough, I offered a polite smile. "Well, what brings you to my humble abode?" Tom, still visibly agitated, blurted out, "Your lawyer called me. He said I have to pay next month's rent for the apartment, $6,000. You never told me it wasn't your apartment." "You never asked about it," I replied calmly. "And if you want to continue living in that apartment, you'll need to pay the rent." Lisa, always quick to seize an opportunity, nudged Tom. "And look at this place. It's stunning." Tom nodded eagerly. "Yeah, why don't you just give us this house instead of that apartment? Otherwise, we'll take legal action and sue you for everything you've got." Their audacity struck me as almost comical, and I couldn't hold back a laugh. "You want to sue me for this house? Tom dear, I bought this house long before you were in the picture. You have no claim to it whatsoever." Their faces flushed with frustration, and their voices rose in protest. "You can't just kick us out. We have rights," Tom shouted. "That's where you're mistaken," I stated firmly, picking up the phone. "Security, could you please escort these individuals out? It seems they've made a wrong turn." Shortly thereafter, village security arrived and escorted the trio out. Their protests dwindled as they were led away, leaving a quiet calm that settled over the house like a soothing blanket. After they departed, I sat back down, the earlier laughter replaced by a weary sigh. It was evident that Tom and his sister were grasping at straws, attempting to intimidate me into relinquishing what was rightfully mine. I phoned my lawyer once more, recounting the events of the day's confrontation. "We need to be ready for anything they might throw at us," I asserted, my voice steady with resolve. "Don't worry, Elena. We're prepared for this. They have no legal basis," he reassured me confidently. The day of the court hearing arrived with palpable tension. Walking into the courtroom, my lawyer by my side, I braced myself to confront whatever claims Tom and his family had concocted. The accusations were absurd. Tom alleged that I had exploited him, portraying himself dramatically as my slave. He painted a picture of endless chores and an ungrateful existence under what he described as my tyranny, while his sister Lisa and her husband Mark nodded in agreement, affirming his every word. I fought the urge to roll my eyes at the melodrama. Fortunately, it was soon our turn to present the truth of the matter. My lawyer stood confidently, adjusting his suit jacket with poise. "Your Honor, we have evidence that refutes every single one of Mr. Thomas's claims," he declared firmly, then proceeded to introduce our first witness. June, the au pair hired by Tom, stepped forward. "I worked in their household, handling all the chores and cooking. Mr. Thomas rarely helped," she testified, supported by employment records and pay stubs that clearly showed Tom's minimal involvement in household duties, contrary to his assertions. Following June's testimony, my lawyer introduced the prenuptial agreement. According to this legally binding document signed by both parties, he continued, pointing to the signatures at the bottom, it explicitly states that in case of divorce, Mr. Elliot is entitled to nothing, no alimony, no compensation. The courtroom fell into a hushed silence as the gravity of the prenuptial agreement settled over everyone present. Tom's complexion paled visibly when my lawyer continued, Mr. Elliot, did you read this document before signing it? Tom hesitated, his voice faltering. Well, I saw the part about what would happen if something happened to Alina, but you didn't read it in its entirety, correct? My lawyer interjected. Yes, but I didn't think. Tom began to explain. You didn't think to read what you were signing? My lawyer pressed, turning back to the judge. Your Honor, we also have evidence of Mr. Elliot's substantial gambling debts, which Mrs. Elliot graciously paid off, and we have a signed acknowledgement from Mr. Elliot himself. As Tom slumped in his seat, the weight of his circumstances seemed to settle upon him. The judge's clear and firm voice cut through the courtroom. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, this court grants the divorce requested by Mrs. Alina Elliot. Additionally, all claims for compensation and alimony by Mr. Thomas Elliot are denied. Leaving the courtroom, I felt a profound sense of relief, though it was quickly overshadowed by the commotion outside. Lisa was angrily berating Tom, her words sharp and unforgiving. You idiot. All you had to do was get her pregnant and die. Then we could have had it all, but you couldn't even manage that. I paused, stunned by the extent of their betrayal sinking in. They hadn't just wanted money, they had harbored darker intentions. Months passed since the courtroom drama, and I gradually began to reclaim my peace, focusing on my health and business. One crisp morning, while reviewing business reports over coffee, my tranquility was shattered by an unexpected visitor. Glancing at the security monitor, I saw Tom standing disheveled and desperate at the gates of my village. Curious yet cautious, I instructed the guards to let him in, wondering about the sudden appearance. As he approached the front door, I could see the strain etched into Tom's face, the weight of recent hardships evident. He dropped to his knees dramatically as soon as I opened the door. Elena, please, I'm begging you. Take me back. I'll do anything. I'll cook, clean, whatever you want. Just let me stay here, he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. I looked down at him, my expression composed yet resolute. Tom, after everything that has happened, why would you think I'd even consider that? It wasn't all my idea, Elena. It was Lisa's plan to push for the baby, to end things that way. I never wanted any of it. I swear, I was just caught up in it, he blurted out, desperation evident in his words. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I maintained my composure. Tom, what you're failing to grasp is that it's not just about what happened or whose idea it was. It's about trust, and you shattered that beyond repair. You didn't just go along with Lisa's plans. You stood by her, knowing how dangerous they were for me. He scrambled to his feet, reaching out as if he could physically undo the rift between us. Elena, I'm lost without you. I've taken out a loan to repay the $50,000, and I've started working again. I'm trying to make things right. Trying to fix things doesn't erase the consequences, I replied firmly. What you need to grasp, Tom, is that you made choices that led us here. Now you have to face them. His expression crumpled with regret, and for a fleeting moment I almost sympathized with him. Almost. But then I recalled the calculated discussions about my health and their schemes. It's time for you to leave, I said, my voice steady and resolute. And Tom, don't come back. You're not welcome here, not now, not ever. When he hesitated, still attempting to plead, I turned and gestured to the security team, who had been discreetly waiting nearby. They stepped forward, escorting him away as he called out my name, his voice fading into the distance. After he was gone, I stood at the doorway for a moment, allowing the silence to envelop me once more. This house, this life, I had built it, and I wouldn't let anyone disrupt it again. Returning to my morning routine, the disruption settled into a resolved chapter of my life. Looking forward, my thoughts drifted to future plans, dreams of travel and meeting new people. The world was vast, and my heart, once weighed down by betrayal, now felt light with possibilities.